Hi, everyone. My name is Kunal Arroyo, Executive Director for the Recruiters Network, and welcome to the Discovery Call, the show where we learn about different technologies and how they're currently being used today to solve some challenging problems for HR and talent acquisition professionals. And today, we're joined by Jamie Schneiderman, a graduate of University of British Columbia and Harvard Business School. You may know him as the founder of ClearFit, author of the book What to Why, the fundamental shift in the way leaders build high-performing teams, and most recently, the founder of CareerSpark. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks for having me on.
So, simply speaking about the transition to CareerSpark now, what can you tell us about specifically about the problem that you're solving today, and how this is really helping individuals in the industry in HR and talent acquisition?
So what we're doing is saying, okay, well, how can we help companies use the right holistic picture of data? So, objectively, what are you? What is a person? Or sorry, what has a person done, and who are they? And again, when we say these things, it's not what do I think they are; it's who are they, and we're trying to layer on as much science into that as we possibly can. And then how do they then compare to what success looks like? And success as not driven again by opinion, but success as driven by top performance. So if you have people who are already doing a job and they're doing it well, if you could understand why those people are doing it well and sort of quantify that, you now have a framework or a benchmark for what success looks like. And now, if you can take that benchmark, make it objective and data driven, and then compare individuals against it, you now have a framework for doing things like hiring people better. So, is this person going to be good for this job before you hire them? Before I move somebody around in my organization, are they likely to be successful? If they're not successful, can we answer the question of why they're not? So now it can enable coaching, training, development. And so again, ultimately it's getting away from what is a crapshoot of subjective view of people and sort of guesswork to a more data driven view, but not to like force decisions, but really to help support better decisions around those people.
So, could you talk a little bit about what the main differences would be when it comes to CareerSpark's tests or assessments that are sent out versus some others that may be out there?
Mhm. So I think I've never liked the word tests or assessment, and the reason is that I've always found it's um, you know I think historically the HR world, if you like, has looked at it as how do we screen people? What's the barriers we're going to put in front of someone to come in? And I don't look at it that way. To me, I think of the word match. How do you find a place that is really good for how do you find a person that's great for the company for a certain role, and how do you find a company and a role that's right for the person, or some combination, and then put them together. So we think about this very differently, as opposed to me saying, I'm going to test you to see if you'd be good in sales. I'm saying, what are you? What would you be good at? And now let's see if there's things within our organization that would be good for you. And that's kind of how we see this. So what we're doing differently now is, as opposed to saying, as you come in to apply for job A, we're going to test you against that job. What we're saying is, okay, now come and apply to our organization. We're going to collect this information about you. And through that application process, what we can actually tell you is, here are all the roles within our organization that would actually be good for you. And they may be very different than the ones that you even thought about when you first came in. And so now what's happening is, for an organization, it's better utilization of the talent that's coming to their door. And for the candidate, it's a much better way to discover, if you like, the right careers or places for them within an organization. And the same thing applies from a career pathing, internal mobility perspective for existing employees.
Can you use something like this for interns that come in through those types of programs, or how early can you start having someone take this?
So the science itself. So there's an element here around stability of who you are, certainly from a psychometric perspective. Um, when we look at it, what we've typically found is that people tend to start becoming a little bit more stable in terms of, what makes them tick from a work perspective around the time that they're, call it 18 to 21. So consider there's a variation, and they tend to stay fairly stable over time until about 55. And then there's quite a differentiation that occurs over them. But during that time, it tends to be this is who you are. So from a purely quantitative decision making, like predictive perspective, that's sort of the range that we're in. Having said that, I will tell you that I have actually administered the same survey to younger teenagers, but more to provide personal guidance to them, right? So for me, that is less about you should do this, you have to do this, but the data still is directionally very accurate. And so, I personally look. Yes, it's my business, but at the same time, I'm pretty passionate about trying to help people find the right path. I wish someone had done this with me when I was that age, and so any way I can help individuals find the right role is something that I honestly want to jump all over and try to do. So yeah, so I've had conversations with a lot of teens, anywhere from, call it 14 to 17, I would say, who I know through friends, family, etc., just to try to help provide some guidance around what they might think or might want to think about. And to be honest with you, one of the funniest parts about that is I'm often not convincing the team of what they should do. It's often data that they can then use to explain to their parents what they really are passionate about, what they've always felt passionate about, but now there's some support that says, this is why I feel this way. It's for real. I really am a very creative, innovative person, as opposed to, I know you want me to go be a lawyer, but I'd rather go out and, do something that's more creative or allows me more flexibility. Again, to each their own. It's not one is better than the other, just what's right for you.
So how accurate are these assessments actually going to be, right? So if teams are looking to buy this and bring the solution on,
Mhm.
should they expect 100% to rely on these for internal hiring and mobility and decisions, and then in turn would companies need then to hire less, I guess, talent acquisition or recruiting folks because they can kind of rely on this test or assessment?
No. So look, we're dealing with people, right? So I think that's one of the things that's important here. It's right now we're using not nearly enough data to help with these decisions, but by no means would I ever suggest advocate for using this 100%. That there's no way. What we found with our system and with the data is it is highly accurate, and so we've had hit rates in the above 80% before there's any other interaction with people. Having said that, what I always view it as and what I always talk about it with people are, how can we help you narrow the focus, or at least focus on the people with the highest probability of succeeding, number one. And then number two, on the areas that are most important. So what you're now doing is you're letting talent acquisition people in whatever area they're in focus on more value add parts, as opposed to high scale, high volume screening that, by the way, is not very accurate when human beings are screening. They're just looking at resumes. It's not really very helpful. This system can rate, rank, sort people, put you in a better position, highlight or flag the right people, and not one person, by the way, because I don't think that's not the answer. But here's a group of people ranked. You may pick the 10th best person that we've said, but you're not likely to pick the thousandth best, this thousandth person, right? That's the difference. Is that if we can get you to the highest probability people right up front, and then you can move down that list, you're going to get to the answers faster, better. So again, I think what we're trying to do is remove some of the process pain that exists here, and the time and effort on that work, and help get to the right decisions faster and a better and much better decisions, again, so that recruiters can do more value activities.
So, this is kind of a good transition into our next segment, which we have here on the show called How Accurate Is. So, I've sent you a few images, and if you could, just to the viewers, maybe through those images and kind of describe, what they look like, and describe to them how accurate this actually is, in your world.
Funny. So the first image is Will Ferrell on clearly doing some stand up, and it says in quotations, before you marry a person, you should first make them use a computer with slow internet to see who they really are. Um, but besides the fact that it's anytime I see Will Ferrell up there, it's funny. I love this statement. I think the idea of the more you can understand about a person before you make a critical, important decision about, spending time with that person. In this case, marriage, and I would argue it's exactly the same thing. Or sorry, not exactly, but similar thing in terms of hiring them or committing to having them work in your organization or vice versa. The more you should know about them, and in this case, I love this example of see how they react to something that that is bad to see how they to see what they really are. I totally agree with that. Ultimately, the real goal here should be who are you for real? Because if I understand what you are for real, then I know what I'm really getting myself into. Love it.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on to the second one here we have for you.
Okay. So it says the true personality test. When you retake a personality test and another type shows up, and it's an older gentleman looking at a group of people and a car and saying those people lied to me. Um, so so what do I think of this? Um, you know, ultimately, I think ultimately, there's different. This is part of my problem with personality test, and whether you can actually be something different than you are. Our goal in everything that we do isn't about allowing people to manipulate data and be what they uh, think you want to be. I think the real goal here is to have an accurate picture, right? So I could say we have checks and balances in our system to make sure that when a person's sharing, they're not lying, right? They're just being honest. And the goal isn't to try to catch someone. It's really just to say, I just want an accurate picture of you. Because again, if we look past screening and start getting into matching, that's really the idea. So that's what you should be looking at. And I'm hoping we're going to be able to get into a world where it isn't, oh, geez, I got screwed over. Someone lied to me, and get more into a place where people are getting a real picture up front.
Third one here then might kind of play off, your thought there. So
So if I was to tell you there's a guy sitting at a table or sitting down, he's got his phone with him, and he's basically saying, am I choosing this option because I want to, or because I know it'll give me the result I want? And we, like I said, there are checks and balances in our system that don't let you to do that. So don't tell people what you think they want to hear. Just be honest about it. There are no right or wrong answers. Look, there's quite a range in terms of personality testing, psychometrics, right? So there are ones where you can manipulate your results. Ours cannot be manipulated. You can't game it. It's much more sort of sophisticated type of solution. And when you have that, really the goal here, like I said, isn't about catching people. It's really just saying, I just want to know who you are. Because if I know who you are, and it's a true picture, and this is really what the job is, then we know it's going to work out.
and the last one we have here for you, Jamie.
It says takes personality test, gets answer wrong, and it's let's just say it's an older picture of a guy smiling with his braces out and stuff. You know, I mean, look, I've always said, I think there's this perception in the marketplace that there are right and wrong in personality, and there are not right or wrong. There are people who are built, who are naturally built or have a tendency to be good at certain things, and others who are built and naturally good to do totally different things. Some people have no interest in speaking publicly, and they want to work quietly in a corner on their own, and others who want to be out in front of people talking all the time. Well, those are preferences. They're completely different. Or those who want to have nice structured process around their work and kind of do 9 to 5, and others who want to have way less structure, way more flexibility. Well, does how does that make the answer right or wrong? Each one of those people is a unique person, and each role is a unique role. So, again, I started off by saying that too many people are in the wrong job. In fact, it's about 70% of people are in the wrong job, and that's because the philosophy has been focused around right and wrong, and there isn't. There are right places for some people and wrong places for the same person, and that's got to be the case. So no, I don't buy into getting an answer wrong. I think you answer what's right for you.
Well, there it is, Jamie. Thank you so much. That concludes our segment of How Accurate Is.
Thanks.
Awesome. So, moving on here, we have two more questions for you. What can you tell folks about the implementation of something like this? How does that work?
Yeah. So okay. Look, implementation will vary from organization to organization. Depends what you're trying to do. I would say that typically the way we're working with organizations is, you need to go in and do a bit of a proof of concept with folks. People say, yeah, 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 you're telling me it's accurate. You're telling me it works. Okay, so we have to show you that's a given, and I understand that. And then, we're working from there until, a larger scale pilot, which is to build business cases and things within the organization, prove it out more broadly. So those are pretty typical things that you're going to do. And during that, when you start talking about implementation, we can get those things going pretty quickly. You're talking about maybe, several hundred people in a group, one department, one role, or a set of roles, right? And tried it out over a period of time, prove it. And then once you know that once the organization sees it work, and has some data to prove it, which, you're going to see things like boosts in productivity and better performance and lower turnover and all those things. So we know it's going to work, but organizations need to see and quantify that so that they can justify it financially. And the time was, now you're into, okay, we want to now apply this, and we want to apply it to different areas. And as I mentioned earlier, most organizations have their own systems. They have an applicant tracking system. They're using an HRIS, like a Workday, success factors, those types of things. And so what we're typically doing is then working with them to integrate this data, this information directly into those systems. I'd like to say that those are all standard, but that's nonsense. It's not really the data that's the challenge. It's every organization has their own set of workflows. So we usually have our implementation team is working with an organization to figure out what their needs are, to make sure they don't have to change the way they do everything to start applying and using that data. But it's a pretty straightforward process. It doesn't take a long time. We actually try to take a lot of the work onto ourselves around analysis and other things to make sure that we're doing the heavy lifting, and then letting the organization then, use it and benefit with it on an ongoing basis.
So, understanding that it is going to vary company to company, size, the teams. What can you tell people about the cost of something like
Cost. No, just yeah. So look, our goal here is to make sure that whatever we're doing gets used as much as possible. Okay, so philosophically, I think that's a very important thing. And so what we've done is we've actually structured our pricing around a sort of a flat fee based on the number of employees you have. So think about it like it will vary, but just to wrap your mind around it, and think about it like, call it $4 a month per employee, right? For unlimited use. And again, it can be higher for a smaller organization, lower for a much larger organization, but that's kind of a good way to think about the numbers as sort of a basic way to focus around it. And then, to me, the real key in this is, okay, so that's important from a budgeting perspective. What we're really focused on is what's the ROI, right? So how quickly will those numbers pay out? And I can tell you that we're typically paying out an annual investment in the first, 30 to 90 days at most, right, of an annual expenditure. So because the costs we underestimate the costs of people in the organization, that they are usually the largest expense line for every organization. And so it's very, very easy, given the inefficiencies associated with them, to pay out any investment, even though HR typically doesn't have that budget, which is why you got to talk ROI.
Jamie, we made it to the end of our call here. I appreciate you taking the time. I do have some homework for you, however. You got two of the four memes, Will and the elderly gentleman, as you described him. The other two people who you must know who they are, it's Travis Scott and Rick from the Pawn Stars.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Okay. There you go. I should be paying a little bit more attention there next time.
It'll help you in the future somehow. There it is for you.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks, Kanal.